Yes, Sarah Timms, thanks for joining today, for taking the time. So, looking on your LinkedIn, I think so. You're a product leader with nearly 15 years experience. Today, you work with clients either in more of a hands-on capacity as an interim or fractional product leader, but you also do a lot of training and coaching.
Mhm.
And also the co-founder and CPO of Intic, so in finance and trading. I'm not going to try and describe what they do. I'll let you do that because I don't fully understand derivatives. You previously held roles such as interim VP of product, interim head of product, product coach, freelance product manager, and you've also co-founded a crowdfunding platform for animal welfare and wildlife conservation. And I
Mhm.
did see as well, you started your professional career training as a solicitor for a couple of years as well. So a slight change of direction somewhere along the line.
Yes, indeed. Very big change, I think.
Yeah, definitely. How would you describe what you do? Is there anything I've missed? How would you normally describe what you do to people?
That's a great question. I describe it as I do a range of things for companies, as you've kind of just described. It can be anything from I go into a company 5 days a week, usually to build a team for them, train their pre-existing product teams, and to help them really do a transformation where they are delivering product that hits commercial targets. So that's very intensive. All the way through to I might work with an individual at a company for 1 hour a week, coaching them on best in class product, and then everything in between. So that can be fractional, which is kind of the fancy word for not full time. So 1, 2, 3 days a week. Consulting on specific initiatives and projects that companies have. So that can kind of be usually slightly shorter term engagement. So a company might need help for 2 to 3 months to do something specific, or even less. So really, if a company is for some reason struggling with their product, I come in and will work in multiple different capacities to help them achieve whatever they need to achieve.
Yeah, great. And you moved in, you took on your first freelance product manager role back in 2016. So curious, why have you remained self-employed, if you have remained self-employed until
Yeah.
I think now you're co-founding, but even then still some level of entrepreneurial sort of streak going through that. Why?
Yes. So I think it is that entrepreneurial streak. The company I founded, the crowdfunding platform, that was back in 2010, 2011, and I ran it for 6 years. And after that point in time, I got to be the boss. I mean, obviously, I still always had board members and so on to answer to, but I was really in control of my own destiny. And I was building something that I really cared about. And so I did that in the States, and I returned to the UK and started working and realized actually you're never truly independent, even when you're a freelancer. Like, you're always answering to someone. But for me, I don't know what it was psychologically, being an employee, having those what felt like meaningless appraisals, having to book time off. I just didn't feel like I was in charge of my own destiny. And so I very quickly jumped into the world of freelancing after realizing in 2015 that it was a growing area for product management. Um, and I never looked back. I loved it. And I work exactly the same way as if I am an employee, just as devoted and committed, usually putting in longer hours. But just you retain that little bit of control, which I always really liked.
Yeah, very similar to myself. I worked in technology consulting with Accenture for nearly 5 years. Really enjoyed it, but there was certain parts of it that I just couldn't get on board with, like the appraisals and more sort of admin outside of the job and actually delivering work, which didn't feel valuable. And there's two sort of points I want to touch on next, and they're sort of related, I think. You mentioned you saw it was a growing area. Could you elaborate on that? Because I totally agree. That's literally why I repositioned my skill set around product around the same time, 2016, 2017. Were you seeing, what were you sensing? And
So I was looking at companies, and a large number of the engineers within those companies were contracting. And again, I observed they acted no differently than an employee in terms of their output and kind of the expectations on what they would deliver. But the bulk of people in the design roles, the research roles, the product roles were permanent employees. And I would run across occasional contract freelance product managers, and just started to think, okay, well, if half of an engineering team is a contractor, why not the same for a product manager? And because of my personal motivations around kind of feeling like I wanted to work for myself again, I just thought, well, if they can do it, then so can I. And I realized fairly quickly that there were several people like me. Clearly, you were at the same time in London, I assume, doing the same thing. And companies have just as much of a need to kind of really rapidly crank up their workforce or crank it back down. And so if they're bringing in a contract development squad, why not bring in a contract product designer and product manager? Now, I do agree with the school of thought that product management is very, you've got to have a really good knowledge of the industry or be able to learn it quickly to have that kind of strategic knowledge and knowledge of the user. But at the same time, if you're joining a large development operation, you can, if you come in as a contract product manager, I think you can learn it fairly quickly, and you can bring in subject matter experts from around the business to help supplement your knowledge. So I jumped into the world of freelancing.
yeah, how do you think the industry or the market has changed since sort of 2015, 2016? I'll share my thoughts in a minute, but I'm curious what you think.
I think even in the, 8 years, which is really, it's quite a long time, the field of product management has really matured and thought a lot about what it means to be an exceptional product manager. And so I think it's really evolved. Even back in 2015, there are a lot more job postings for product owner, for example, which in my view is just a role developed by the Scrum Guide. Now you see much more, it's a product manager that companies are looking for, and they understand the difference, for example, between a product manager and a product owner. There's been a lot more, I think, of an evolution as well in the role in terms of the need to have a really good understanding of commercials. So before it used to be, tell me about the metrics for increasing something or other on your platform. Now in interviews, I think it's a lot more about like, prove to me that you understand that everything that you do on that product ties to some commercial or strategic goal of the business. So talk a lot more in terms of business goals and then using the product to deliver upon those business goals. I think the other area where I see really significant changes is the blurring between product manager and product designer, product manager and product marketing manager. I personally start to think it gets a little difficult to have one person doing all of those things, and to me, I think they're specialisms. But more and more, the industry is honestly, I think everyone wants to kind of make product decisions and get to control what the product's going to do. The reality is the product manager doesn't really have that authority or autonomy either. So I see a lot more people desperately wanting to be product managers. So I think it's caused this blurring of the lines of who does what.
Yeah.
Not necessarily nothing.
And naturally, more and more companies hiring, that creates more people moving into those roles internally as well and externally. And then there's more people on the market. I think now it feels a lot more saturated. And I was going to ask you, maybe I will ask you, you talked about a product manager becoming a bit more commercial. Is there anything else you think is missing from the product discipline, the product role, anything that you're still sort of focusing on?
Yeah, I do think coaching. And I think for me, it was what caused the kind of step change in my career. I jumped out of freelance to join a company specifically because they were delivering a really excellent product coaching program. And I wanted to do it and learn how to be a really effective product coach. In doing that, two things happened. If you have to teach something, then you really think about what it means to be a product manager and what's important. And you have to be able to explain it very clearly with lots of examples and case studies. So actually, it upped my ability to be a product manager, having to teach product management. And then the second way it was so instrumental in my career change was that, or my career growth, there are so many product people that have not been taught how to do product management well through no fault of their own. If they've joined a company that doesn't do it well, they won't do it well. If they work for someone who's never been taught, they'll never be taught. And so you don't go to university to be a product manager, and the caliber of product manager you can get on the market is just, you can get amazing people, and then you can get people who've never been taught and don't necessarily know what to do. And so I think if any person wants to be a product leader, they are going to have to make sure that every product manager and designer and researcher and analyst on their team is exceptional and can be the absolute most high performing person, because that then enables you to create this unstoppable force of a product function that delivers product that meets commercial targets. And I see in a lot of the product leaders I coach or I work with, they haven't had to do that. And so they're great product managers. That doesn't necessarily mean they can create and coach and train a team of great product managers or product designers. So I think that learning how to coach is a really good skill to have.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. I wasn't expecting that answer, I'll be honest, but yeah, I think that's it makes a lot of sense. And I turned down a role earlier this year because it was in a different country, and I've got a young son. But for that exact reason, I really wanted to take it on, because I do a bit of writing from time to time and things, and it forces you to crystallize your ideas and challenge your own ideas and pull in other case studies and examples, and conversations like this, go and speak to other experts who can provide new insights and things, and then sharing that with people. It's also very rewarding when I've done mentoring and coaching on the job, isn't it?
Yes.
There's not many things I've done that's probably more rewarding than that, I think.
Yep.
And hiring
I would
people.
agree. Yeah. It's amazing when you get to coach someone, and I've got some people I've been coaching. I coached them when they were product managers, and then they're good, and now they've moved up to a more leadership role, and I'll start coaching them again. And you just watch people. I think everyone has the capacity to be amazing with the right support. And so I just love watching people kind of really blossom and become exceptional product leaders. It's cool to see.
Yeah, great. And yeah, you just answered one of the main questions I wanted to cover, which is how you got into coaching, actually, which is great. I want to just go back to just a step before in your career. So your first freelance product manager role. How did you land the role? How did you get that gig?
I had done some work for the company previously, and they had an opening, and I was able to join as a contractor. They knew me. They knew I could do the job. I know it's one of the hardest things, though, to get your first contract role. And in fact, my second role after that, it took me a bit of time to get it, because I still didn't have a very long track record of being a contractor. And I think that's quite, if a company's bringing in a contractor, they want to be really certain that contractor can just come in and hit the ground running. You don't get the same onboarding. You're not going to get the same kind of support that I think you get as an employee. And so companies really want to know that you'll just come in and you'll be proactive, and you'll schedule meetings with everybody you need to schedule meetings, and you'll really kind of put yourself out there. So I think for people looking to get their first contract role, trying to be a bit creative and maybe accepting roles that perhaps don't want initially, just to get their foot in the door and demonstrate they can operate as a contractor as well as a employee.
Yeah. So how did you land your second freelance role then? So I think Selfridges, then Kazoo, wasn't it? After, so it was Book a Table by Michelin, then Selfridges
Yeah.
and Kazoo. Can you remember how you landed those, your second and third roles?
Yeah, so Selfridges, just interviewing. So I finished at Book a Table. I actually quite often don't have another contract lined up. In fact, virtually never do I. And I was just looking on job boards, online job boards. I can't remember the name of any now because it's been a while since I've had to find a job in that way. But I would be making kind of building relationships with recruiters as well. And in fact, those recruiters that I met when looking for my role at Selfridges, I'm still in touch with. Of course, every freelancer kind of has a really good recruiter network, and they really build that over time. That becomes absolutely precious when people want to then jump into the world of fractional, because I rely on those recruiters, and they know me now. I mean, I've been in the London tech scene for several years and kind of consistently been working and hopefully always getting good feedback and reviews. And so working with recruiters and really building that network of recruiters that you trust is critical, I think.
Yeah, sounds good. And I was similar. I landed my first contract job on a job board, and I think, if I remember correctly, the client took a gamble on me because I'd worked in consulting. They'd worked in consulting. They knew that you get thrown in the deep end a little bit. And I know that's not something everyone can replicate because not everyone works in consulting, obviously, first. And then, a few recommendations, referrals. An agency I worked with in the first contract referred me to another client in my third contract. Yeah, I think you've got to get a little bit lucky, or you got to just put in the legwork. It could be job boards or whatever, and then delivering good work, maintaining relationships. That's why I do a bit of writing as well. I've written for Mind the Product 5 or 6 times, and just showing up on LinkedIn, people might message me and say, "Oh, yeah, I need a product person." Actually, I remember you're in that space, aren't you? So should we have a coffee, sort of thing?
Yeah.
Talked about. Oh, sorry, go on.
The network, yes. Again, everyone thinks the London tech world is huge, but in fact it's tiny. And so most of my roles now are referrals, just like you'd said. I've worked with someone in the past, and they'll just ping me on LinkedIn or message me, "Hey, are you looking?" And then vice versa. So often, in fact, I got a message this morning from someone, "Hey, I'm back on the market. Do you need anyone?" So that network is precious. Never underestimate how small the London tech scene is, I would say.
Yeah. Is there anything you do proactively to maintain that network?
I do less than others, I think. I think, actually, you've just said kind of posting on LinkedIn. I think some of I'm in a coaches network, and some of the people are amazing, and they're putting really good content onto LinkedIn. I don't. I think it's a slightly different skill, and I think it's potentially one I'm not that great at, that ability to put a slightly different slant on something in an interesting way and say it in 2 to 3 sentences in a way that's going to get people to kind of engage with that content. I'm not very good at that, and so I don't do it. I think it takes quite a long time, and I think Shreya Doshi probably does it the best. He says something incredibly insightful in 2 sentences, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could sum that up. So that is one way I think people can maintain the network that I don't. I'll go to events and just keep those relationships. And then on LinkedIn, I use LinkedIn constantly to kind of just stay in touch with people. So an ex colleague of mine was looking for a product manager, so I just shared his content for him and out to my network. And someone sent me a CV and I sent it along to him. So just I like to have genuine relationships that I maintain with people, that I'll go for coffees help people out if they need to write an article, just things like that. To like, it's nice to be able to just have a network and know people in the industry. And one day you might be sat across interviewing me, and I'll know that I've met you before, and we'll be,
or vice versa. Yeah, I think,
yes.
and I'm the same. Like, you know, occasionally, but anything that's earth shattering. And I look at people and I wish I thought of that. But I do wonder, and I don't have the data on it, but I wonder how valuable turn on that sort of content versus, like you said, some of the things you do, you know, just showing up and doing a really good job. You know, the coaching that you do with individuals, you know, repercussions down the line because you just get to know more people. You deliver training to lots of people in the past, and you know, just being there, responding to messages that nobody sees, and in direct messages and things, I think can be just as valuable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, really valuable relationships, much better than probably 5,000 followers. Certainly in the sort of work we do, I imagine.
Yeah, I agree. Some people you might interview, I think, would say they do get leads from their content, and I'm sure they do. But I think it's a lot of hard work, and I think a large portion of their time would be focused on generating content, which is great. Like, if people love doing that, then they should do it. It was one of the things I didn't like about the world of fractional and kind of more shorter term engagements is you're continually doing business development and sales and marketing, and that's a different role, completely different to running a product team. So people should definitely be aware that there are upsides and downsides with the world of freelance.
Yeah, and that was actually going to be pretty much my next question. I'm sure you know lots of people who work in product in a full-time capacity and have done all their career. Spent enough time with them, I imagine, to understand some of the differences, perhaps. But from your own experiences, what do you think the pros and cons are of working or having worked in a self-employed capacity, whatever that may, as a product coach, freelance, interim, whatever it might be?
I mean, the variety is amazing. I often think to myself, oh goodness, if I had the same company with the same email address and the same seat at the same desk for too many years, I'd start to go a bit stir crazy. And with freelance, it's really fast paced, and I like the expectations of you are high. I think you're being paid a day rate, and you're on day one you better start adding value, whereas when you're an employee, you know, there's in the first 30 days there's this, and then 60, and then 90, so the ramp up expectation is kinder, I would say. But I like rising to that challenge. I think I like setting myself challenges like that. When you then jump to fractional, it becomes massive context switching, I think. I mean, one day I'd be working with a client doing event tech. The next day I might be working with a client doing pharmaceutical drug discovery. So like very major context switching, which it can be exhausting. And I'm not sure in the end I loved trying to hold that many different sectors and products and teams and names in my head, because again, with fractional, usually paid by the day, and paid well. If I went in on a Monday and I was thinking about Tuesday's client and accidentally got anything muddled up, like, that's just not okay.
Yeah.
So on Monday I'm thinking, all right, okay, these are the names of the product managers in the teams, and these are their challenges, and this is the challenges of the product and the challenges of the company and the market. To me, it became too much to hold in my head. And I mean, I mitigated that by writing everything down all of the time, actually recording meetings if I needed to go back and check anything. Some of my peers who do fractional will say 2 or 3 is the max number of clients. My workload was such that I sometimes would be working with 4 or 5 clients a week because I'd be doing kind of small coaching engagements. I think that is really challenging. The kind of, don't underestimate how much you're going to be job hunting, because if you've got a fractional gig for a couple of months, you're job hunting again in a couple of months. If you want to be working 5 days a week, you've got to fill 2. You might interview for a couple of roles, get 1. So it felt like I was interviewing all of the time and networking all of the time. And so I actually started to favor some of the 5-day-a-week or more long-term engagements, but I think a lot of people do. So then they become more competitive. I'm giving a lot of the downsides, but none of the upsides. It's very well paid. If you can afford it, you can work part-time, which is great. I kind of still want to work full-time. Maybe in 10 years' time, I'll just want to do 2-3 days a week, but not yet. And yeah, I will always love that I have my website and I can showcase all the different engagements that I've done. I'm definitely a more well-rounded product leader because of it, because I've seen inside so many different companies, so many different sectors. So I've seen what works in their context and what doesn't, tried a million frameworks. So I suspect I can bring a lot to the table that perhaps someone who's been in one company for 5 years perhaps can't bring to the table.
Yeah, I can agree and relate to a lot of that. When I've worked on more than one engagement at a point in time, it feels like you're trying to fit, if it's 5 days, you're trying to fit 6 or 7 days into 5, because you're almost doing a bit of prep and sort of recapping either side of those days. It's a bit like when you've got meetings 9 to 5, you're actually doing more than the full day's work because you're trying to do the extra 5 minutes either side of the meetings. So it can be hard to take. But then that's also, that sort of flexibility has given me the ability to do my own projects on the side as well, which is one of the reasons that I freelance for as long as I did. The job hunting as well. I think it's a skill, and I talked about this on another conversation with someone. It's a completely new skill. We talked about marketing briefly, and we might not be marketing experts, but there's certain parts of that you need to sort of hone in on and craft your skills on. And I think that sort of thing is useful regardless. As you know, in more leadership positions, you are sort of pitching and selling internally anyway, and I think sharpening those sorts of skills probably do benefit.
You do. I think one thing that is nice is the interview process is hard and you invest time and effort, perhaps putting together a presentation, and then if it's a no, it's always disappointing. But actually, when you jump into freelance and fractional, you're doing it frequently. And I think one of the things I've learned is actually 100% there are instances where I am not the right fit for a company, and I've learned to become at peace with that, but having gone through it so many times, and then maybe I see who they hire and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't bring that to the table, that was right, that they didn't go with me. And so you kind of learn to be really self-reflective and even get to a point sometimes where you're the one saying to the company, I'm not the best person for this, but actually I know another coach who's got exactly what you need. I'll refer you to them. So again, it's nice in that respect. You kind of learn to be okay when you don't get the jobs.
Yeah, it's a bit of a leap of faith doing that sort of thing, I think, isn't it? But it usually pays off, like in the sense that there's probably a good chance you weren't going to get the role anyway, but demonstrating that level of professionalism will usually pay back.
I 100% believe in good karma. I referred a colleague, a fellow product coach, to one of my favorite recruiters. And for a second, I was like, oh goodness, am I going to lower my chances? What happened in me referring to him is I then became in his mind again, the recruiter's mind, and another role popped up. I was the first person he thought to call. and it ended up being an amazing role, and I got the role. And I really believe me referring a colleague, a peer, to that recruiter helped remind that recruiter that I exist. And so when another opportunity popped up, that recruiter thought of me. So that felt like really good karma, and put good things out into the universe, and good things will come back.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. So let me just consult my notes. Should we talk a little bit about what you're doing now? So, as I mentioned, you're working, in an interim fractional capacity coaching training, but I also saw that you recently, I think, became
Yeah,
co-founder and CPO of Intick. So, firstly, for us lay people, can you explain what Intick do?
I can.
So, your decision. What was your decision? How did that come about? What was your decision to take that on? Because it seems a little different to what you've maybe been doing for the past number of years.
Yes, definitely. So Intick is a fintech startup that is building a listed derivatives blocking network. And for the lay people in the world, that basically means if you are a large financial institution and you want to trade large quantities of futures or options, then you are allowed to do it in a certain way off exchange, is what it's called. And we basically provide a marketplace, therefore, for you to be able to find, if you want to sell a large quantity, we're a marketplace where you'll find someone who wants to buy a large quantity. So we're building a network that helps automate that whole process. And I actually got involved with Intick. Someone I had worked with in the past, a fractional CTO, brought me in to be the fractional CPO. So I was just working with the founder of that company, James, to help him navigate the world of product and bringing a product to market. And I was just working half to 1 day a week. And a few things were happening at the time. One is that I had, as I've kind of alluded to, started to realize, okay, a lot of my work these days is fractional, short term. So I was doing a lot of marketing and business development, which I don't love. I love product, and I want to do it 100% of the time. I was starting to miss. It's been a long time, really, since my last startup, being truly embedded with a company and getting to do everything from setting the product strategy all the way through to delivering on it and doing it for a long period of time. I was starting to miss that. And as I thought back to the roles that I'd enjoyed the most, it was the ones where I was in the role for longer, because I could really impact change and really make a difference. The more I was working with Intick, the more I loved its mission. I loved James, who's the founder, is very visionary and moves at 50,000 miles an hour. I've never seen a founder, and I've worked with a lot of founders, move so fast. And it's a really exciting product. It's very complicated, so it gives me that challenge of having to learn something very complex. And I really believe I can help Intick be more successful. And so the stars kind of aligned. Me and James were having an offsite, and we were talking about 2025, and I was thinking, okay, well, we should probably have a conversation about me with Intick in 2025. What does that look like? And so we just started talking, and it kind of snowballed, and eventually we agreed that it would be a great thing for me and for the company to join permanently full time. So I'm moving away from the world of fractional. I'm still doing some work with some of the companies I've been working with for a while, just on a limited basis. But yeah, gone all in with the company, and
Brilliant.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, congrats. So so that's going to become your full-time thing with a little bit around the edges.
Yeah.
Amazing. I totally agree as well. Like the complex products and challenges are often the most interesting. From a business point of view, they're usually a little bit more there's a bit of a moat around them in the sense that not everybody's going to understand how to build a platform to trade derivatives unless you've
Yeah.
got the sort of banking experience that James, the founder, has.
Yes. Yeah, it's felt like the perfect kind of team because James has been in banking for 20 years. Our third co-founder, Ben, is also very, very long banking background as well as startup experience. And then I ran my own startup, and how to then harness those amazing visions and all those ideas for everything that we could do and convert it into, here's a product that will meet commercial targets and business strategy, and work with the development team to kind of make it a reality. So hopefully it will be a huge success.
I'm sure it will. But yeah, best of luck with it.
Thank you.
Last question to finish, I suppose, and maybe it's a nice way to recap the conversation, but also your transition. For anyone, even myself perhaps, I don't have a website currently, for example, and I've thought maybe I should get one, maybe I shouldn't. What sort of advice would you give to someone who loves working in product, but like yourself just has an urge to work in a slightly more entrepreneurial capacity, maybe likes working on shorter engagements, whatever it is, just feels like they want to work for themselves in some sort of capacity? What sort of advice would you give for them? Let's assume they've maybe got a little bit of experience in software, whether it's a delivery or product or something. So we've got some base skills, and you're coaching someone. What might you say? And yeah, and don't do it could be an option as well. But I think, yeah, any advice you would give?
It would be do it. It really would. Like, there are always opportunities out there. They will run across people who would say, don't do it. I have in my career, but I know myself better than that. And I know that I can do it. And so it's a bit cheesy, but I'd say believe in yourself. Like, if you want to do something that is a little bit different and not work according to the normal rules of 9 to 5, you join a company, you're there for years and years, do it so that it works for you. Take the leap of faith. It's a little bit scary, but actually when you take that leap, you're forced to hustle and find something that will work for you. And I think most people manage to find a way to make it work. There'll be tough patches. There might be lows where you don't have a job. So try to hold your nerve. But if you believe that you can bring something to the table, then I'm certain people can succeed. So if they believe in themselves, I would say do it. And don't listen to the people that tell them they can't do it, because only they know themselves. And when I first started my startup, I spoke to a lot of people because I needed to get a lot of help to do it. And it will always stay with me. Someone who I really trusted said, I don't think you'll be able to do this, Sarah. And I'm so happy I ignored them, because I went on to do it and successfully and ran the company for 6 years. So that was always a lesson for me, is believe in yourself and don't listen to the naysayers.
Yeah, I second a lot of that. And the way I think about it is, fast forward many years, hopefully, and I'm looking back and I'm thinking, which decisions would I regret not making? Or which paths would I regret not taking, regardless of the outcome? And it's rarely, oh yeah, I'll stay in this job and hopefully I can get another promotion in a year or two. I'm not saying work is everything. There are things, outside of work that are just as important, more important. But professionally, if you can afford it and make things work for you, I think, and you have the option to take risks that are in line with your ambitions, I think definitely I found it rewarding as well. And
yeah. And in the end, what's the worst that's going to happen? It doesn't work, and you go and get a regular job. Like, you've lost nothing. Maybe you've eaten away into your savings a little bit, or you didn't get that new car or something like that. But
that was it. I saved up, I think it was about 6 months rent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be fair, a few years ago, I didn't have a mortgage, rates were lower and things like that anyway, but I saved up basically enough to live on for at least 6 months. It just gave me a bit of breathing space. And to be
Yeah.
fair, it wasn't till the end of that I actually pulled out my finger and did something anyway. So it's which probably speaks volumes. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a good piece of advice, though. I will say that I would work with contractors and they didn't put anything away for a rainy day. I always worked on the basis it would take me 6 months to find my next
Mm.
gig. And that helped at times when the market was wobbly and it took me a lot longer. And the market is wobbly at the moment. It's not the strongest it's ever been, as you kind of observed earlier in our conversation. So I guess timing might be something else to think about. Like maybe don't quit your job today, but maybe just kind of start putting your feelers out and doing your networking and preparing yourself to make the leap.
It's a good time to
Mm-hmm.
start preparing. Like, maybe I should create a website and start doing a little bit more of the marketing stuff and attending a few events, which I've started doing. Went to my first meetup since COVID lockdowns a few months ago. I met some really good people. I'm part of a new WhatsApp group. Hasn't led to paid work yet, but these things can take a
Mm-hmm.
while.
Yeah.
Maybe now is the right time to start laying the foundations for when people start injecting big budgets in, hiring and things like that, and new projects. And then there's always new things happening.
Yeah.
Intick,
Yeah.
new company.
Exactly. There are loads. Some of the biggest tech giants were born out of recessions, I think, and so there's always opportunities. And I would say to people, don't worry. Don't expect you're going to network tomorrow and then next week you're going to have a job. But like, I think just to believe and keep trying and working and networking, and then eventually good things will happen.
Exactly. Final question: where can people find you to learn more? I know your sort of day-to-day work is changing a little bit, but if anyone wants to connect, where's the best place?
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all of the time.
Right.
So, I mean, I've got my website, but they can't talk to me on
Yeah.
on my website. So I say, drop me a message on LinkedIn. I mean, that's how you connected with me, and here we are. So definitely always open to chatting.
Sounds good. I will include a link. And just want to say thank you, Sarah, again for taking the time. Really appreciate it. I've learned a lot, and really enjoyed the conversation.
Same here. Thanks for asking me. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.